Hi, my dear Astro family. So today we are carrying on the little series that I started doing about finances. So we looked at the second house and the eighth house axis last week, where I explained how the eighth house becomes the money house that leaks your finances. And today I would like to talk to you about the fifth and the 11th house, another two astrological territories that are connected to our finances. So while the second house and the eighth house are about kind of like the plumbing of money, the fifth house and the 11th house are where the magic actually happens. This is about the creation of wealth, the social expansion of it. So I wanted to look at it so that you can have a little bit of a better understanding, and I'm going to be giving you some scenarios. Now, if you would like to understand astrology a lot deeper, then I highly recommend joining my membership program, where actually the first month is half off. So you can experience how my teaching style is and so forth, because I think you are going to be able to get to know yourself 1,000 times better. So, but let's have a look at how the profit axis is actually playing out. That's the fifth and the 11th house. So, the fixed signs are kind of like the containers of energy. So, this is the reason why the succeeding houses are every single of them somehow connect to finances. So, if your fifth and 11th houses, for example, fall in fixed signs, basically it means that you have got the stamina to build a brand. You might struggle with the value shift though, like I mentioned that in other videos, because you want things to stay the same, but the market is always moving. And you need to think of the 11th house as the house of market. So the fifth house is a very speculative income house. This is the house of creativity, the calculated risk. So it's not just about children, it's about pretty much your brain children. You can give birth to a project, or this is where you might even make certain type of investments as well. So think of the fifth house as the house of product. For example, if you have got Jupiter here, your ideas can be quite big as well as profitable. If Saturn is here, you might be too afraid to take the risk needed, for example, to launch your own business. So this is where the root chakra, for example, could be coming into the picture, and we have got a book available on my website where we describe the root chakra for you and certain type of at least about 21 or 27 illnesses connected to the root chakra, where we explain to you what the psychological childhood experiences are. So I highly recommend that book because it's been kind of like life altering for quite a few people actually. So now the 11th house is the market, the networking. So the 11th house is often known to be the house of gains. It is literally the money you get from your career because it's the second from the 10th house. So you can have a great product, fifth house, but if your 11th house or the ruler is weak, nobody is going to buy that. So this is the house, let's say, of your YouTube audience, your membership programs, basically your tribe. So if you have got the fifth house and the 11th house ruler are in a difficult conversation in the chart, such as by square, oppositions, or even conjunctions, this could show that you have got a great product, but unfortunately no one is going to buy that. Or if you have got the 11th house ruler in the 12th house, actually you might be invisible to your audience and you have been working extremely hard, but your magic is not necessarily reaching the masses. Now, traditionally speaking, the fifth and the 11th house are considered to be super good houses. The reason why, because the fifth house has got Venus as planetary joy placement, and 11th house has got Jupiter as its planetary joy placement. So they can bring a lot of success into your life. So a good fifth house with bad 11th house, it's kind of like a little bit the talented, starving artist type of scenario. You have got great products, great ideas, but no audience, no sales. If you have got a bad fifth house, but a good 11th house, that's pretty much the influencer. You can have a massive audience network, but nothing of substance to sell, basically. Well, the bestest is when both of them are super good. So it means that they have got strong dignity, or they are connected by trine or sextile, or it can be conjunction as well, depending on the ruling planet. It's a creative genius, basically, a creative genius that meets a massive loyal market. And of course, if you've got both, in bad conditions, it's often the stagnant type of experience. No ideas, no connections, and then you might be stuck in a low value loop, and you might end up just being kind of like working in a slavery type of industry. So that's important to mention. So let's just do a bit of a practical recap here. The house is about the money houses. The second house is your wallet. So this is where you do certain type of practical actions, such as you save money and earn money. The eighth house is the leak, the debt, the tax man. This is where we manage and try to protect our finances. In the fifth house, we do a bit of an investment. And don't just think of investment as in buying crypto and stuff like that. You invest into your own talent as well. You become creative and then you take a risk. And the 11th house is the profits. And that comes through networking and a lot of scaling as well. So recently I made a webinar about the fixed signs and the succeeding houses. So you might want to check them out because that might be able to give you a lot of understanding how these are functioning. In that webinar, we look at the fifth house as well, very deeply, and the connections, because the fixed signs or the succeeding houses are not just about money, but your confidence level as well. So I want to give you some scenarios now here. What happens if the fifth house ruler is in the 11th, or the 11th house ruler is in the fifth house? And what happens when the fifth house and the 11th house rulers are in hard aspect or good aspects, and so forth? So therefore, if the fifth house ruler is in the 11th, your self-expression becomes your income. So this is the classic signature for a influencer, a great content creator, for example. Somehow your hobbies and your creative spark actually naturally find a massive audience. And somehow your joy can become your literal paycheck as well. Now, if the 11th house ruler is in the fifth house, then your audience is actually fueling your creativity. So usually those people are very good with market research, demographic research, and so forth. You create something that your audience expect you to do. So you can be running a very successful membership, for example, where your fans tell you what to write about next. And actually, I would love to hear your ideas about what you would like me to make video about, or what webinar you would like me to prepare. Like I said, I've got the membership program and it's available for about £79 a month. And then you can watch as many webinars and courses as you wish to. Now, what happens if the fifth house and the 11th house ruler are in hard aspect, such as squares and oppositions? That often it's about performance anxiety. You might love what you create, that's the fifth house, but maybe you hate the business side of it, and that's the 11th house. And then you have a huge audience, but you feel like a sellout when you try to make money from them. And it might become a constant struggle to balance this personal joy with the market demands. It can be stubbornness as well, that I don't wish to do what my audience wants me to, because that's just not me. I don't want to be the part of that. Now, if the fifth house ruler and the 11th house ruler are in good aspects, such as trine and sextile, that's basically an effortless profit archetype. So your creative risk can pay off quite nicely without much struggle. You launch a project and then it is followed by certain type of gains. Now, if the fifth house ruler is very functional in your chart, but the 11th house ruler is weak, it's a bit of a hidden genius type of archetype. So you have incredible ideas, high value contact as well, most likely, but no one sees it. Somehow your networking abilities might be broken here. Imagine that we have got this high-end restaurant without a sign or out front. So no one is going to notice it. You can have the great food in there, but might not be able to walk in, or it's going to be like a mouth to mouth type of scenario. So you're going to get recommended by others, but you are missing out on chances. Now, if the 11th house ruler is strong, but the 5th house ruler is weak, that's a little bit like the empty brand type of archetype. So you are super good with networking. You have got, I don't know, 100K followers, for example, but you don't have enough product to sell. So it's just kind of like being famous, or it might be like famous for being famous, but there is no creative core there to sustain the long-term wealth. Now, there are some extreme scenarios, right? So both of them are weak. Then it might be about the struggle to find joy in your work and you feel isolated from society. This actually can lead to pretty much a deep root chakra issue because you don't feel seen and you don't feel supported by the world. And then if both of them are strong, then that's basically the mogul status. So you are a creative powerhouse and there is a massive contribution as well as distribution networking. So something that you take a creative risk and then it leads to high gains as well. You know, if the fifth house rule is in the 11th, usually the hobby becomes a career there. And the motivation is because I get paid to be me in a way. If the 11th house rule is in the fifth, that's often market driven creativity. I give the people what they want. And if the fifth house rule is strong, but the 11th is weak, it's the master of craft, but usually poor, you know. And the question is, why am I invisible all the time? If the 11th house is strong, but the fifth house is weak, it's high reach, but low substance. So I'm popular, but I'm kind of like bored a little bit. So, do let me know if you have got any of these combinations. How does that play out in your life? Do you think that you have got some creative potentials, but you don't reach enough of your audience? For example, I want to give you an example of my own chart. My fifth house ruler is pretty strong, but the 11th house ruler and also South Node in my 11th house is a little bit weak. So this could be a scenario where I am, let's say, providing a super great content, but I'm not reaching as much audience as I hope for or I would like to. So do let me know how this plays out in your life because a bit of attachment or feedback is always welcomed so that we can learn more about these stars. Good luck, everyone, and I will see you in my next video. Take care. Bye bye.